Dr. Raman K Attri is a powerhouse of positivity that will leave you spellbound. And he's with us here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Toby, for having me at your show.
Well, it's great to have you on the show today. Now, you are a global authority on speed. What is meant by speed in this context?
Good question, Toby. We're talking about the speed of employee development. We're
Mm.
talking about bringing our people, our team members, our leaders, managers to a stage where they can do first time right.
Mm.
Anything they deliver, they don't have to rework. That
Uh-huh.
means they are at a stage where they're proficient, they master the art, now they are delivering consistently. And that's the speed we're talking about.
Yeah.
But many times, when I talk about this topic of speed, people think that I'm talking about a mad rush that pushing employees to deliver the task or projects. But
Yeah.
that's very short-term gain of speed there. But the
Mm.
real long-term gain, what we're talking about is let's make them better and
Yeah.
they will deliver faster than your competitors.
Yeah. And what are some of the ways of making people fast and speedy?
Oh yeah, I think there are a lot of ways. I conducted a research for almost for about a decade,
Yeah.
trying to figure out that how employees or people can be put in that particular mark in a shorter time. I
Mm.
approached about 70 world-class organizations, and that was my basic questions. How did you develop your employees and your workforce to be at that point in a shorter time?
Yeah.
And I came back with lots of different strategies. But for this show, I'm going to share one key concept, what we call a speed enabling ecosystem.
Mm.
It's just like this, the way you have your kid, and when you want to develop your kid, you give your kid a sort of culture, an environment, a nurturing, development, interventions. So, same way, when we're saying that if we want to mature our employees at a faster rate, we gotta need to give them an ecosystem. Which
Yeah.
consists of their managers, consists of technologies, it consists of peers, team members, what kind of support they get. And it also include coaches, mentors, and other experts in the company. So
Mm.
fundamentally, we align all these elements together to make them grow at a faster rate.
Yeah. And a lot of people, perhaps no matter how hard they try, find it really hard to push ahead in life. Is it always possible to be fast and have the speed?
I think there are a lot of factors here.
Yeah.
We are talking about combination of personal and professional life. So
Mm.
there are a lot of factors that basically pull people back. Um, what I realized from my own personal story is that it's not all about external. It's
Mm.
mostly the internal factor which keep pulling people back. What I realize is that people don't progress faster if they don't have clarity.
Yeah.
The moment we give them the clarity, they don't need motivation or inspiration anymore. They
Mm.
already got the fuel to move forward with that clarity. So most of the time when people start keep figuring out where exactly am I going to go, it slows them down because they don't have that clarity. So I
Yeah.
think that's the major pull factor. And there is another factor, what I realized in my research is that even if people have clarity, most of the people think that it's their race. They
Mm.
are solo in that race. It's they are the one who are going to need to go to the other end. But in reality, if we think, we don't work alone in companies, in organizations, we work with people.
Yeah.
In our social circle, we interact with people, we work with people. So if we start leveraging the ecosystem around us, the resources, the people, the connection, the relationship, the managers, and
Mm.
all the other thing that surrounds us, it actually speed up our journey.
Yeah, that's for sure. So then, how did you come about being a global authority on the speed in the first place then?
That's a big question. But I'm going to take you a little bit back to my
Mm.
childhood. I am actually physically disabled. I
Mm.
can't walk. I got polio when I was 6 months old.
Ooh.
So, first thing I lost in my life was the ability to walk. And
Yeah.
alongside, I lost the ability to have speed, to be able
Mm.
to match pace with other kids of my age. And that was the point. Then I started figuring out, what? There must be some better way for me to move forward. And my best bet at that point of time was to immerse myself into learning.
Yeah.
I tried reading every possible book I could put my hand on. And slowly, I started loving that part of the learning,
Yeah.
and then I started reading and learning ahead of my age. And that was
Mm.
my beginning to try out what's the potential my mind holds. And that put me into that path of trying to experiment with my own learning. And soon I tried to see, my X factor is if I can learn faster than other kids. So
Yeah.
I started with that thought process in the, in the childhood. But
Mm.
slowly, what happened is that I started doing a lot of experiments, and it put me into a path where I earned two doctorates, and then
Cool.
I earned over 100 international credentials in a very short span of time. So
Yeah.
that was a sort of evidence that, okay, we can actually speed up our learning.
Mm.
And that was the number one thing which put me into the learning field. Today, I am a learning leader for a Fortune 500 company. And
Ooh.
part of my job is to really, figure out engineers' proficiency path and speed it up. And
Yeah.
on top of that one, I also did a quite a research for about 2 decades with some of the best organization in the world.
Mm.
Because if you see, speed is very important in business, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I, kind of my specialization come about.
Mm. And being unable to walk, I guess it sort of takes a lot of your independence away. So it's interesting that you've done so well in your life and have also launched a sort of campaign, if you like, for people to be successful. And I guess your own struggles has catapulted that and made you have perspective.
Yeah, you are right. But I think if I begin with the thought process that it's me. I
Mm.
gotta need to make a difference to myself. First, I gotta need to impact myself. At that point of time, it was my only goal was to be as good as other kids
Yeah.
or be better than them. Right? I
Mm.
mean, I wanted to have an X factor at that point of time, and that's the whole goal I had. That I had nothing in my mind that I'm gonna do some sort of movement or I'm going to be going out into society and helping other professionals.
Yeah.
But it was my journey at that time. But interestingly, my journey came about with the outcome that now I am able to help other people because I learned through those struggles and I
Mm.
thought about that. I figured out the ways how other people can learn faster. And I think there are certain ways they can.
Yeah. And how come you know so much about this? Like, what makes you an authority? Have you done a lot of research on this?
Yes, I had done quite a research. In fact, I have two doctorates in
Wow.
learning, and in fact, our doctorate journey itself is pretty, I would say, struggleful. But it was so much I was interested because, as your question was that
Mm.
how it came about,
Yeah.
in my mind to be able to create a movement or a forum for people to really figure out those strategies. So in the beginning, it was me. I
Mm.
was trying to accelerate my own learning. I was trying to stretch my own limit. And that was the reason I went on for about 100 international credentials. But then part of that one, I thought something that works on me may not work on other person because their context is different. The situation may be different. Their challenges may be different. So
Mm.
is there a universal way that works for everyone? So that's where I started going with the deeper research with my two doctorate, and I figured out there is science behind how to speed up your learning and performance. And once I accumulated that, I also realized not many people in the world are actually doing research in this area.
Mm.
And that's where I started having the right kind of connection with the right experts out there. And I started building that know how little by little, little by little. And that's where my movement about helping people came
Yeah.
about.
Mm. And who do you think speed applies to? Is it just the people wanting to get ahead, or the people at the top? Maybe do they need to know it to help the people at the bottom, or maybe even push further in their own lives?
Speed is applicable to everyone.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of slice this answer down into a few buckets. Um, let's talk about in our personal life.
Mm.
In our personal life, most of the time we struggle to figure out the things.
Mm.
And we spend lots of our time trying to figure out our path, which path to go, which way to go. And once we have found the path, we don't get enough guidance or support. And as a result, we move very less. So that means in the same amount of time, if you could have achieved a lot, You could have propelled yourself further into your life, but
Yeah.
you are spending a lot of time figuring out. So that's where I think speed matters.
Mm.
But when I say personal sense, I don't mean to say that we have a race or we have competition with the other. I
Mm.
think personally, our competition, our race is with ourselves.
Yeah.
We want to surpass our own standard. We want to excel. We want to attain the excellence. So it's all about how soon you can reach to a point where you say, yeah, I'm striving the excellence. I'm going to take the next step forward, but I'm going to go there faster so that I
Yeah.
have time to do a lot of other things. So that's the personal domain.
Mm.
Professional world always have been speed savvy,
Yeah.
time savvy, because time is money in a corporate setting or professional setting.
Mm.
And I think it's not about just money, but there is other factor also. If you are an employee, you go from your home to your office to do a good work, and you go there, you have this intention of doing a great work. You want to have a sense of pride or achievement. And guess what? If you can't contribute to your job, you're not going to come home feeling happy. So that
Mm.
sense of achievement only comes when your employer, your manager, your leader help you achieve that point where you can contribute. And we say that's the point of proficiency. So it's very important that your leader or your employers take you to that point faster. So speed is
Yeah.
very important for your personal feeling the pride of the job, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just about money. Meaning money factor is there when we
Mm.
shorten people's journey, when they are able to deliver the best customer service. It's gonna translate into money. It's gonna
Yeah.
translate into a lot of competitive opportunity. But personally, it means a lot to people.
Yeah. So, you've written a book called Speed Matters. What is behind the book, and what can we just expect from it in general?
Speed Matters is the book I have written mainly for executive CEOs and the
Yeah.
top management
Mm.
leadership. This came about from my research with the 70 best in class organizations, those who have mastered the speed. And
Yeah.
not every organization out there can master the speed. As I said, most of the organization, they feel by pressing their employees with their aggressive timeline, they
Yeah.
are achieving speed. But that speed is very short lived. It's a
Yeah.
mad rush. But the real speed comes when we bring our employees up to speed in a shorter amount of time, because then we deliver the customer service which other competitors can't.
Mm.
So that's the science behind that speed that came about from my research. So then I built all that science into this book. And one of the key piece that came about is most of the organization don't even know how to measure speed.
Yeah.
They use this word accelerate, that we're going to accelerate this, we're going to speed this one up. But unless you cut the time out or unless you measure it, you don't know you're speeding up. It's just like a speedometer in the car. If
Yeah.
you don't have that, you don't know at what speed you're going. Are you going slower than the market? So I wrote this book for an upper level management and leadership to understand that there is a mechanism by which they can measure the speed. There are metrics which they can bring into their organization, and that's how they can translate a speed savvy culture.
Yes. And how long did it take you to write it? Because I'm guessing because you'd already done all this work over the years that most of your research would have been done for you almost.
So my research took about 8 years. So
Wow.
I was pretty actively engaged in 8 years, but then out
Yeah.
of that 8 years research, a lot of know-how came about.
Mm.
And big piece that came about is obviously the strategies, that how do you speed it up? But then part of that equation was a realization that not many organizations actually understand speed very well.
Yeah.
So that's where I put together this book for us to educate them. It's my gift to the corporate world that, okay, here's the book, here are the metrics, read it, and you can get to have understanding about that speed, the
Yeah.
nature of speed they need to bring in their organization. Strategies, how we really speed it up, we can bring that, we can talk about, kind of maybe at a later stage, later phases in their education. But right
Mm.
now, the education our executives need is how speed matters and how they can bring that one into their organization.
Yeah. And what would you say are the main messages and takeaways from the book?
I think my major message in the book is that speed is very important.
Yeah.
And the speed we are talking about here is different from the speed of creating a mad rush.
Mm.
So I wanted to create that distinction for them. And
Yeah.
then I wanted to give them a mechanism. How do they measure speed? How do they quantify speed? What kind of metrics they need to bring into their dashboard in their quarterly meetings, just like other business metrics, and how they can hold their managers and the leader accountable to
Mm.
really report those metrics. And part of this takeaway is also very important piece is why should they care about speed? How other organization has benefited from speed. So I brought in some great evidence there that when you shorten the time to readiness of your employees, it
Yeah.
translate into great amount of retention. It translate to a lot of employee engagement and loyalty, as well as millions of dollars of cost avoidance, I would say. So that's the
That's for sure.
overall takeaways they're going to get from the book.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite interesting. And have you written any books before, or is this your first one and a bit of an exciting adventure?
This is my 16th or 17th book. I have
Wow.
lost the lost the count now.
Yeah.
So I have written about 20 books. I think
Mm.
about 17 are already published out of that one. So this must be my 17th book.
Yeah.
Before that, I have written some books on different aspect like accelerating the skill acquisition
Mm.
or accelerating the leadership. There are
Yeah.
certain books I have written on a technical and scientific domain, and as well as I have also written some books on arts. So I
Oh, wow.
write a range of books, but
Yeah.
lately I have been more focused on translating my research into books.
Yeah. And what got you into all this writing in the first place then?
Yeah. So as a child, I loved writing a lot of things like stories, poetry, and a lot of other written pieces that I used to, kind of create.
Mm.
But I never got any chance to publish all those things
Yeah.
because there is a sense of, I would say, fear, you can say, or you
Mm.
can also say that perfectionism. We want to make a perfect piece out there. And back then, there wasn't a lot of infrastructure available.
Yeah.
Even the accessing or reaching out to publisher without internet wasn't even
Right.
possible. So all those things kind of stayed in my code files. So eventually I kind of brought those out and started publishing. But most of those things started in my childhood itself.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to the fact that you're not really able to walk, do you have a lot of strength? Because I take it takes a lot of that to overcome that limitation. And so, how exactly did you do that?
Good question. Thanks, Robbie. Um, I think that it came about late, not in the beginning. In the beginning, I was struggling just like any other disabled person. I
Yeah.
was trying to figure out that how am I going to live with this. So my first tendency was that am I ever going to be a normal kid? Am
Mm.
I going to be able to do the things that other kids are doing? But the answer came about is no. I will never be able to do those things and never be what they can do. So then the
Mm.
question, logical question I asked myself is, what's my X factor? What's my edge? What are the
Mm.
things I can do better than others? And I realized that my immobility itself was a gift
Mm.
because it put me into the chair.
Yeah.
And when you're tied to a chair, what you're going to do? You don't have any social distraction. You don't have those spoiler friends. So you're going to hold a book. You're going to get immersed into that world.
Yeah.
So I figured out that if I can't do this, I can do something else. And that something else became my path.
Mm.
So I think when people get into some kind of adversity, and they keep thinking about adversity rather than if not this, what else?
Yeah.
So what else was my path, which I had taken in my life, and that's how I overcame that. But
Mm.
it has its own struggle. It
Yeah.
took me many years to get the clarity I needed.
Mm. Yeah. Well, where are we able to find your book if we want to read it?
All right. I think your listeners can find me at my website, ramankatri.com. That's
Yeah.
my name website. And that website, I have a lots of learning nuggets, a lot of learning blogs and
Mm.
reports and videos, which they can actually, start watching, start reading. And hopefully that will put them into the path of speeding up their own learning and performance. Otherwise, they can find me in any of the social media channels. My handle is Dr. Raman K Attri. Doctor is a shortened form, Dr.
Yeah.
Dr. Raman K Attri. Everywhere they can search me: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. It's same handle. So that's another way to reach me.
Great. Well, thanks very much for coming on the show today. It's been a very interesting chat.
Thank you so much, Toby. It has been my pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.